I'm going to try to do this again. I got completely cut off, which doesn't surprise me. I'm talking about politics, God's sovereignty, and human responsibility. In 3 weeks, we have an election coming up. And nobody knows what's going to happen. Only God knows. You know? So I want to talk about common sense theology and politics. Common sense, what is it? It's something lacking in this country. Common sense is the ability to see cause and effect. If I go outside when it's raining and it's lightning, and I recognize that, common sense tells me there's a good chance lightning may strike me and I could be killed or injured. If I stand on the edge of a cliff, jumping up and down, there's a good chance I may fall over. If I get in the car or plane without it maintaining proper maintenance, there's a good chance, common sense tells me, that it may malfunction and I could wreck or even die. Common sense is the ability to recognize if you do one thing, it's going to happen to another. It's really the principle of sowing and reaping. If you see a little child about to stick their finger in an outlet, that little child doesn't know that hole is going to give me a good shock. Okay, he's naive. Well, people, this country is full of naive people that don't know their left hand from their right. And I see it every day, even among Christians. Isn't that sad? So I did a whole message this way. I don't know if I can remember everything I said already. I thought it was pretty good, you know, in the way that I broke it down and everything, but let me just share what I can remember of it. In the early 1970s, there was a guy by the name of Francis Schaeffer. And Schaeffer wrote a book called The Christian Manifesto. And in it, he outlined how America was going bankrupt morally, and how we were losing the battle, and how God was slowly being pushed out of the picture. In our school system, in our judicial systems, in our families, and in our churches. That was 50 years ago, people. He was able to see the cause and effect. Since that time, what he said has proven to be so true. Once you give up moral ground to wicked people, it's almost impossible to get it back. Why do you think the Harris administration or Biden administration, they have this slogan, "We're not going back"? They don't want to give up their so-called freedom to be morally bankrupt, whether it's gays or lesbians or transgenders or pedophiles, homosexuals, or whatever they call themselves. They don't want to give that up. Okay, they think that's freedom. It's not freedom. The Bible calls it bondage. Okay, they're sold out to their pleasures. Okay, and they don't want to give that up. They're not going to give it up without a fight, as we've seen. Look what happened to Trump when he was president. Look at what Biden did. He decorated the White House along with Obama with the rainbow colors that God gave to humanity as a sign that he would never flood the earth again. And they did it as a sign for sexual immorality, what they call freedom of expression. You know why they do that? Because they say it's my own right as an adult. I make my own choices as long as it doesn't hurt anybody. But it does. Okay? They want to exercise rights without responsibilities. No person is an island. Everything you do has an effect on somebody. So you have a total moral breakdown in our society. And Francis Schaeffer was right. He says, you know, these liberals know how to work our judicial system. They get people that are bankrupt morally to be judges, not even elected, many of them. And then they make decisions and laws that affect everybody else. They know how to work the system. So what has happened? They have redefined so many things. That's why our whole jurisprudence system has come and turned into what we call legal progressivism, which means that laws are being redefined case by case. They redefine what a marriage is, who could own and adopt babies. I mean, you got people in the Biden administration, men living together, committing sodomy, adopting children, pedophiles. You got a guy that's a transgender that's in charge of the health administration part of our country. So what happened was, and Francis Schaeffer was right, they did all that, they ushered all this immoral setting, because what happened is they slowly pushed God and his word out of the picture. Okay, so I'm just kind of setting a backdrop to what I want to talk about. Politics. We got an election coming up in about 3 weeks. Okay. Politics, God's sovereignty, human responsibility. Nobody knows what's going to happen. Only God knows. Okay? Is it God's will that this country go under because he has been systematically pushed out? Is it God's will that Christians become passive and turn the other cheek? Is it God's will that Christians just lay down and not fight for righteousness' sake? You know, the story is told about this old farmer who had a massive crop. He looked like he was going to really have a great harvest. So this guy came along and said, man, God sure has blessed you this year with this crop. And the farmer looked at that guy kind of sarcastically and he says, yeah, you should have seen this field when God had it all to himself. See, the farmer understood God's sovereignty and human responsibility. God gave him the land, but the farmer had to work it. God gave us this country, and many have fought for it. And my father's with my mother and my brother are buried over there at Fort Sam, the military cemetery, and fought for the freedom and rights that came along and many of the blessings that came because of a Judeo-Christian foundation that we had. And many of those blessings are leaving. Is that God's will? If somebody hit me on the right cheek, should I turn to left cheek? There's people and Christians that argue for that. It's because they don't know the Bible. Yeah, that's what the Roman soldiers did to an inferior Jew, to show them how superior they were. Somebody hits me on the right cheek, do you think I'm going to turn to left cheek? I may turn, but I'm going to be turning with as hard as I can with a right cross. You know, and you know why they do that? They hit you and they bully you and do all that because you allow them to do that. Why do you think all these people push God out of the country, push prayer out of the schools? It's because weak people did nothing. They had a responsibility before God and they did nothing. Dietrich Bonhoeffer said, all it takes for evil men to do wicked things is for good men to do nothing. God's sovereign and human. Of course God doesn't want this country to fall apart. He doesn't want any family to fall apart. He doesn't want any person to fall apart. He's doing everything possible to give us wisdom and to give us a life and give us blessings. But it doesn't happen through osmosis. You got to take it. You got to work it just like that farmer did. You can't lay down like a coward. Let me ask you something. Would you follow Kamala Harris or whatever her name is into combat? Would you trust to get in a foxhole with Pelosi or Newsom? Have you ever seen their districts or AOCs? They're filthy. That's the way their homes are. Their minds are. They're filthy pigs. Yesterday, God help me, I was so mad. I went into H-E-B, which is a grocery store chain here in Texas. In came these three guys from Central America. They weren't legal here. One of them was super fat, and he's walking real macho, and he had these other two fat guys next to him. So he commanded one of these, scooters that you ride if you are disabled to put groceries in. And you know what they were doing? They were going up and down the alleys, grabbing packages. The first package I saw him grab was a loaf of French bread. He ripped it open and started eating. He hadn't even paid for it. And he said, and they're laughing and all that. You know why they do that? Because they think Americans are stupid. Well, we give them all our money. We put them up in hotels. We don't take care of our own. They're not stupid. They got a lot of street wisdom. They know that if they come here, they're going to get a free handout. And nobody's going to do anything about it. I gave them the dirtiest look I could give them. And so I told the H-E-B guy that was standing right there, look, they're eating all this food and they're not paying for it. And he just kind of shrugged. Why? Because they don't want to get their hands dirty. They don't say anything. They don't lose their job. They said we have many of these politicians that are in office now. Some of them are pretty good, but a lot of them are cowards. You know, you go into these districts where you have these Democratic politicians running their cities, they're turning into pigsties. You know, and people are running out of their own apartments in Denver, in Colorado. You got them here in San Antonio now, where they had this whole gang there. They were charging people extortion fees to stay in their own apartments. Protection fees. I wish they'd come to my door and ask me for a protection fee. I'm not a passive Christian. I never have been. I don't believe God wants us to do that. Okay, that's not what it meant in the Bible. And people say, oh, you're supposed to love them like Jesus did. Let me tell you something. Jesus was a man's man in the part of humanity that he was. He also was God. He was the God-man Christ. Okay, and if you want to see how, you go all through the Old Testament and you look at the theophany. A theophany is Christ appearing as a man through the Old Testament. And when he comes in the book of Revelation, and he's dealing with the churches, and when he comes in Armageddon, and see if he acts passive and loving, you know, he's going to beat these people to death. What he did in the temple, what was that? That was zeal that took over him. And I was saying, Miss Elsie used to tell me, hey, look, Manny, look, be a lamb for your affairs, but a lion for others. You know, when you look out for the interests of other people too, not just your own interests. See, we live in a country that's full of selfish, narcissistic people. You know, they don't want to get their hands dirty. They don't want to get involved. You know, they don't want to rock the boat. They want to keep their head in the sand. And so when Francis Schaeffer wrote about this, he saw that not only was our culture changing and people becoming passive and indifferent to immorality and evil taking precedent, you know, wrong taking precedent over right. He saw that coming. It only has a logical conclusion. And that logical conclusion is the collapse of this country. Financially, through families, through churches, through government. It all comes to a head, and then boom, it happens real quick. You want to see that happen? What's even worse is this, is that you did nothing. You said nothing. And you remain a passive coward. I have no respect for people like that. Okay? I have respect for people that want to take a stand for righteousness' sake. So does God. In fact, in the Old Testament, it says God is looking to strongly support those that are fully His. He says, go into all the world and make disciples. Lo, I'm with you always. You don't need to be afraid. Don't be afraid of the person that can kill you. Be afraid of the person that can rob you of your soul. What does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his soul? You want to gain money? You want to gain wealth? You want to gain possessions? You want to gain notoriety? You want to become a hero cult? You want to become popular? You're willing to give up everything for those things? God help you. You know, or you want to be counted. Yeah, God's sovereignty. He doesn't want this country to go down. He doesn't want you to go down. But you got to fight for it. You know? He doesn't want us to turn the other cheek. He doesn't want us to be passive. That's such a misinterpretation. The problem with so many misinterpretations today is the church has failed so badly in teaching its people how to rightly divide the word of truth. And so Christians, even Christians, have gone woke. Whole churches have gone woke. I know the PGA, which I'm a part of, has gone woke. The military, which I was a part of all my life, has gone woke. Schools, good schools that have gone woke. Even the seminary that I attended is beginning to go woke. You know, what does woke mean? It means the opposite of what's really woke. They're not becoming more enlightened, they're becoming more darkened. The problem is they're a bunch of cowards. They don't want to rock the boat. Oh, we don't want to let these, we got to let these gays, they have rights too. Nobody has a right to say and do whatever they want to do unless they believe they're autonomous and they're gods. They don't understand cause and effect. See, they want to exercise rights without responsibility. Yeah, you want to teach? Fine, you got to live a decent life. You want to be a soldier? Fine, you got to recognize what it takes to really be a soldier. You know? You got these drama queens, men dressed like women going in libraries, addressing children. What man is going to allow that to happen before their children? Come on, people. I would never allow that in front of my children. Never. You know, the old timers like me, we've seen a lot of changes in our life, you know, since the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. 2010, 20s. Seen a lot of changes, so many changes. And we're heading in the wrong direction. See, the problem, and this one brilliant theologian said one time, the problem with a lot of people today, especially Christians, instead of becoming more Christ-like and modeling more of the characteristic of the Lord Jesus Christ, they're becoming more like heathens with their music, with their dress, with their tattoos, with their piercings. They're becoming more and more like the world, like the cosmos system that Satan is heading up. And eventually Jesus will come back. And that's the other problem with a lot of Christians. Nobody knows when the rapture is going to happen. The doctrine is a doctrine of imminence, which means when Jesus told the disciples, watch and pray, I may return at any moment. It wouldn't have been a legitimate offer to watch and pray if things had to happen before he returned. Nothing needs to happen. He may come tonight. He may not come for another 1,000 years. Nobody knows. So you have a lot of Christians that are indifferent and passive because, oh, Jesus is coming back any moment, so we don't need to do anything. They don't know that. They still have a responsibility. You're still alive today. You still need to go to the field and work. Okay? He may come back. He may not. Oh, well, you haven't read the signs of the times. Yes, I have. I know what's going on in Israel. I know what's going to happen during the tribulation. I know that Jesus needs to come back and establish his millennial rule. But he hasn't given us a timeline for that. And preachers that try to tell you otherwise, they're lying to you. They want you to believe that they have an edge on the word that nobody else has. They're typical cult leaders. Meanwhile, let me tell you something with common sense theology. Common sense theology is recognizing right from wrong, cause and effect, sowing and reaping. Also recognizing, yes, God is still sovereign. He is in control. He did give Satan the opportunity to head up this cosmos system and government systems, of which there are so many. None of them are a righteous system. It's not going to happen till the millennial when he sets up his theocracy for 1,000 years. Then you'll have a righteous rule. But meanwhile, under this cosmos system, people have a responsibility to go into all the world and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and Son, and teaching them to observe all that I commanded you, which are many things. And not running God out of our schools, out of our government, and out of our homes. What are you going to do this election? You going to allow it to be stolen? You going to stick your head in the sand? Or are you going to fight for what is right? You know, I know what I'm going to do. I made up that determination many years ago. I'm going to honor the Lord God in every way that I can. But I'm not going to be passive about it. I'm not right now. I think Facebook cut me off on my other message. They may cut me off on this. Already they're sending me messages. I don't care. You know, I'm going to do what I believe is right. And what's right now is we got to get this country at least beginning to head back in the right direction. Otherwise, we need to transition ourselves to begin to live in a very post-Christian era and time and more in the heathenism. You want that for you and your children, grandchildren? Do nothing. I guarantee you it'll happen, like Francis Schaeffer said way back in the early 70s. God bless you. We'll see what happens.